that will still exist, even if this sequel, if it is a sequel, is substandard. But it also might not be. It might be great. So, was it? Hello, my name's Chris. What's yours? Welcome back to my channel where I'm digesting every new episode of Doctor Who as quickly as I can get a video out, as well as doing a Doctor Who marathon from the very beginning, which I will be getting back to imminently. The next instalment will be Season 13's The Android Invasion. Regular viewers will be familiar with the fact that I didn't particularly enjoy a sustained run of episodes. Not necessarily the amount of episodes, just the length of time they took to air. So Legend of Ruby Sunday, Empire of Death, Joy to the World and Robot Revolution, I thought were, the worst of them, absolutely dreadful, the worst of Doctor Who, and at best, not good enough. Looks last week actually, I guess, kind of lulled me into a false sense of security, in that for the first 2/3 thoroughly enjoyed it, and I thought, oh, maybe this is it, maybe I'm going to start enjoying Doctor Who again, and then it kind of like fumbled the last third, so I was left, it edged me basically. Even the dog was disgusted with that. He's just jumped off the sofa. But I had the taste of enjoying Doctor Who again, and I was intrigued by the Next Time trailer for The Well and everything we'd heard about it as well. I know some people went into it unspoiled in terms of that leak. Others of us were not as fortunate, if you see it that way. I actually was kind of glad that I knew what was coming. Not because it made me I was going to prepare for it, but I reckon in the inverse of how I'd enjoyed the first 2/3 of Lux and then didn't enjoy the last third, if I'd not known that The Well was a sequel to Midnight, I reckon it'd been the other way around. And I reckon for the first 2/3 I would have been watching it thinking, this is just a rip-off of Midnight, and then when the reveal would have come, I would have been like, oh, and then I would have enjoyed the last third, and I would have enjoyed the first 2/3 retroactively, but not at the time of watching. So I actually think that it did well to know this was going to be a sequel to Midnight going in, and I don't need to divvy it up into enjoyed this up until this point and then didn't, or didn't enjoy it up until this point and then did. I enjoyed the whole thing, and that is the first time that has happened in what feels like a really long time. The Well gave me an episode of Doctor Who that I liked from start to finish with hardly any caveats. And I say hardly because, look, as much of a fan as I am, I always go into Doctor Who. The baseline of a Doctor Who episode for me is always an 8 out of 10, right? It's always about 8 out of 10 just because I love Doctor Who. By virtue of being Doctor Who, it will start that highly and then it has to do things to piss me off to bring it down, or it has to do something absolutely exemplary to up it. The Well didn't do either of those things, but to be honest with you, the fact that it didn't do anything that made me detract from that 8 out of 10 was such a relief that that was an enjoyment in and of itself. I enjoyed The Well. I also enjoyed enjoying The Well. It had an extra feeling for me, having not enjoyed Doctor Who all that much recently, to the point where actually it did kind of like put me off it entirely, and even the marathon stalled a bit, partly because I was busy, but also because I was like, I don't really fancy watching Doctor Who at the moment, and that carried on for quite a bit. The Well, I'm not saying The Well is good enough to sort of like make me go, I love Doctor Who again. Like, I never stopped loving Doctor Who, but The Well has made me enjoy an episode, and it's the first episode I'm going to rewatch, like, because I want to, rather than with any sense of caution, rather than sort of like, oh, I need to reevaluate this to see if I was wrong. The Well, I already enjoy, and I'm going to enjoy rewatching it, and that is such a nice feeling. One of the problems I had last week was how it was a pacing issue, right? So that infamous fan scene has rubbed some people up the wrong way purely because, for several reasons actually. One, because it paints Doctor Who fans in a light they didn't much care for, or some people didn't like it because it referred to Doctor Who as a fictional TV show within Doctor Who itself. For me, those weren't the reasons I didn't like it. I didn't like it because it put the brakes on an episode and it was a bit of a momentum killer. And those fans that we were introduced to, not only were they, did we spend 3 or 4 minutes with them before being made to care so deeply that they were performing the ultimate sacrifice that felt a little bit artificial. Not only that, we had literally been told they weren't real. So caring about their demise was very difficult, and it's sort of like the episode nobbled itself in that way. In The Well, a character sacrificing themselves for the good of everybody else has, I guess, become kind of a trope. Here it worked with Shia Castellan's act of sacrifice at the end, because we'd met her and got to know her throughout the whole episode, and her characterization was such that we cared about her. So even just little lines like "it's my job," the references to her background. By the time she takes on the entity and runs to throw herself in the well, by that point we know her very, very well through some excellent scripting, characterization, and a really good performance by Keelan Dunn. That, to me, was the antithesis of what happened last week in Lux. I was invested in this character, and if she had survived, there would have been a sense of triumph that I would have been so elated with. She didn't survive, but her doing that still made me care about her. Little things like that just made this episode hit a lot better. It hit all of the beats as it went along. The pacing was consistent. It built. The reveal for the fact that it was a sequel to Midnight came at about the 2/3 point, exactly the same point as the fan scene in Lux. But there wasn't that obstacle whereby you hit the 2/3 mark. I guess this is a good example of how to also show what a problem I had with the fan scene in Lux, because if it had happened in The Well, because bearing in mind in Lux it should have been a really up-tempo race against time to get out of this realm that they found themselves in, but they stop and have a cup of tea instead. So if in The Well, as it was building up to the fact that it's the Midnight entity, once it revealed that, if the Doctor and Shia and the arsehole troop, can't remember his name at the moment, Cassio, I think, if they had just sort of gone and had some coffee at that point, that would have been so irritating. But it didn't do that because it's not meant to do that. Lux shouldn't have done it either. But The Well kept things going, it kept things moving, and worked as an episode by itself, but it also, I think, didn't harm itself by being a sequel to Midnight. Now, I can understand why people would prefer Midnight to be left alone. If an original is so utterly gold standard, then the idea of a sequel can be a little bit, why? Let it stand alone. Why? I do understand that. However, I never ever think there is scope for a sequel to ruin an original. So Midnight has been an episode by this point for 17 years. It had been an episode for 17 years the day before The Well aired. It's still an episode. It's been an episode for 17 years now, and it stands as that episode that it always has done still. So if The Well had sucked, and you may full well think it did. I didn't. For me, The Well worked. But if I thought The Well had sucked, I still wouldn't have thought it ruined Midnight. I still have Midnight. Even if The Well had gone further in revealing the entity. And I can sympathise with people thinking that The Well did reveal a little bit too much of the entity this time. I mean, Doctor Who Unleashed certainly did. I don't think we needed to see the guy in the outfit. And I choose in my head that that's not what the Midnight entity is. But I still think that The Well keeps the entity as ambiguous as it should. It does reveal a bit more. And I don't just mean in terms of its MO and the way it operates. You actually see a bit more of it in that. You see something. Even if it's just a glimpse. So with Midnight, one of the most effective scenes is when the Doctor is in the cockpit with the two drivers, and one of them goes, "There, what was that? What was that?" And he sees something, but the others can't, which does happen in The Well, but we don't see it either. In The Well, obviously, we see what the person that goes, "Oh, what was that?" sees. It doesn't really ruin anything for me in The Well, because in The Well I think you do need it, because it's one of the most effective moments, I think, when Belinda looks up mid-sentence and you see it. It's kind of an effective jump scare. So I actually don't think it detracted from the Midnight entity, whatever we want to call it. I don't think it detracted from that by seeing as much as it did, and how the fact that it had changed and morphed, because It's already established, and I said in my last video that I honestly thought if it was going to be a sequel to Midnight, it would be a sequel from the Doctor's point of view, but a prequel from the planets. But that turns out not to be the case. It's actually a sequel from the point of view of the planet, the entity, and the Doctor. So if in the 400,000 years that the creature hasn't been there, some people have said, oh, it could have developed based on what it learned in Midnight, which, you know, is true. I can buy that. But I can also headcanon it because there's enough like breadcrumbs laid in the story, in a subtlety that I appreciate, but which hasn't always been apparent in recent Doctor Who episodes. One of the reasons I haven't particularly liked the recent run of episodes is because I feel like subtlety's gone out of the window a little bit, and it shouts at me at the top of its voice with loud colours and starts smacking me about the face. So I always kind of like hold it at arm's length when that happens. But the Well, because it was sort of like seeded ever so nicely that not only has it been 400,000 years, the radiation has changed. So it's no longer extonic, it's galvanic. I don't know what either of those things mean. I just know that they're different. So if the radiation is different, then I guess like the setting of the planet is different, and then that means that maybe the creature has more means at its disposal to mess with the humans that come across it. And they're not humans, are they? But you understand what I mean. With the Well kind of giving us new aspects to this creature didn't make me think, oh, well, it should have just stood alone as something else. There are enough similarities that the connective tissue, had it not been remarked upon, would have made me think, this is a bit too much like Midnight. So by making it a sequel, it's one of the rare occasions where I think I agree with what Russell T Davies says in behind the scenes afterwards, because as they were writing it, and one of my biggest criticisms actually of the Unleashed episode is that this was co-written, and the co-writer is just not mentioned at all in Unleashed. Maybe that's her own wish. But what I would say is that Sharma Angel Wolfall, if I don't know how to the degree she contributed things that Russell T Davies did. I don't know what the balance was because they get a co-writer credit, but she is in part responsible for the best episode of Doctor Who in quite a long time. So I wish she'd have got her props. But look, Sharma, if you didn't want your props, I'm sorry for giving them to you. So little nuggets in the script of even the radiation has changed. That does give me a decent enough handhold to grasp onto the fact that this creature will be different from the last time we met it. So none of that actually bothered me, and I think the connective tissue between Midnight and this one, making it a sequel to Midnight, kind of gave me an extra layer of enjoyment for the episode. Do I think it's better than Midnight? No. But that does not mean, just because it's an inferior sequel, and a slightly inferior sequel, does not mean that it's a bad episode. People use the term sequelitis to refer to like the idea that I guess like that it's a disease and that sequels are always cursed. I never really think that's the case. I think if I was to use the term sequelitis for anything, it's the fact that a solid entry can be discarded out of hand just by dint of being a sequel. So for example, Ghostbusters 2, I don't think is as good as the original. I think Ghostbusters 2 is great, and I think it's better than a lot of films in that arena. So just because Ghostbusters 2 is an inferior sequel doesn't mean Ghostbusters 2 is bad. Same here. I like Midnight more, but I still really, really like The Well. And like I said, I don't think it retroactively ruins Midnight. I don't think that can happen. I think Midnight has stood alone for 17 years. It will continue to stand as the episode it did, regardless of what happens in The Well. If a sequel is bad enough, it still can't ruin the original. It can only ruin itself. That's what I've always thought. Luckily, The Well didn't ruin itself. It had, like I've said, a surprisingly strong script, and it shouldn't be surprising. It has surprised me in terms of the approach taken recently to the show. So The Well really works on the page as text, and it's brought to life incredibly well. The direction, the setting, even just the kind of like expanse of it. Midnight works so well because of the claustrophobia, whereas this is like blown wide open. Some of the sets in the mine are like cavernous, and in a way that actually makes the characters feel more exposed. So it doesn't work, like the tension doesn't work in exactly the same way because it's not as claustrophobic, but because it's so vast, like the shots of them stood by the well itself, where they're about that big and the rest of it is huge, that makes them feel like easier pickings in some degree. So it does what a good sequel should do, in that it doesn't repeat things. It's not exactly the same. And repeating, which is what the creature did in Midnight, I think would have been a step too far, and probably then I would have joined in the chorus of there was no need for this, there was no need to do this sequel to Midnight. But it rang the changes enough that it worked for me. So like it's the same as the Time of Angels two-parter following Blink. It's the same with Aliens and Alien. Like Aliens is technically a sequel to Alien, but the approach is so vastly different that's why it justifies itself as a sequel. The Well, I think, justifies this revisit. So the setting brings the changes. But also the performances bring it to life as well. Now, when I said that Castellion was fleshed out incredibly well, so was Cassio. Like his actions were enough to sort of like make you go, don't, like you, like the fact that he endangers everybody at that point is that's very effective. That makes you sort of like respond to his reactionary immaturity. Mo is set up incredibly well as well. First of all, with her interactions with Belinda and Alice, and then later on, as she sort of like has more of a role to play, even at the end, you know, because we spent the whole episode with her sense of it's still here, carries weight. In any other circumstance, I think maybe the standout performance here would have been Keelan Dunn as Shire, but here she's sharing an episode with Rose Ayling-Ellis as Alice, and that's not to denigrate Keelan Dunn at all, because she is absolutely exemplary. She doesn't drop the ball once, but Rose Ayling-Ellis as Alice it's not just a really heartfelt performance, it's a really clever one as well. And when we first meet her and she's sitting there by herself, starkly sitting there alone in the middle, sort of like ever so slightly too far away, already makes you uneasy of her. Now, when I said I'm glad I knew this was a sequel to Midnight going in, this is also a good indicator as to why, I think, because remembering Midnight and knowing how that creature worked, there were the echoes of Sky. Leslie Sharp in Midnight did such a good job that performance has sort of like, it stays with you however long Midnight was, like nearly 20 years ago, 17 years ago, that when we first see Rose, you think, well, bearing in mind we've already seen the devastation that the creature has wrought, and because this was a sequel to Midnight, you do think, has the creature possessed her? And what's so clever about Ellis's performance is that she doesn't make you think that it hasn't immediately. But that kind of feeds into organic motivations on Alice's part, because Alice just wants to get home, and she knows that if they know something's with her, they won't take her. So she keeps her cards close to her chest, and because we know something has happened and there's a killer about, if you didn't have any foreknowledge, if you didn't have any memory of Midnight or know anything about it, there's still something about her that doesn't make you trust her immediately. The fact that it's a sequel to Midnight, and some fans will know that going in, I watched it and I was like, she is a malevolent presence in and of herself, because she, like, the creature has got her like it did Sky. I think that because that's so cleverly done in the script and through Ellis's performance, that it hangs over a good chunk of it until the reveal, and then when the reveal comes, it doesn't make you go, oh, what? Like, it all builds and works and pays itself off, like, in a way that Doctor Who should do every week, but unfortunately it doesn't. Now, the variety of Doctor Who will always mean that you're not going to like every single episode. I already know that. But when you get a sustained run of episodes that you don't like, it does feel a little bit like, I guess, this is the only, I can only imagine at this analogy, because I'm not a football fan, but it's what I would imagine your football team losing every week feels like. So with The Well, it does feel like my football team won this weekend. And it's not just the guest cast that are set up and done incredibly well here. The Doctor and Belinda involve themselves very organically in the plot, because immediately they just arrive and they're already in the thing and they've got to jump. But once they're down there and stuck in it, the Doctor inveigles them in incredibly well, like good use of psychic paper. Belinda's background as a nurse feeds into the plot like superbly, not only in terms of just the fact that she has to go and like straight away she's trying to see if she can help people, just her compassion and bravery and logic, problem solving comes into play as well, in that she figures out first before anybody else you can't go directly behind Alice. She makes Alice her top priority throughout the episode, as a good nurse should. It all works. That her characterization is, I think, absolutely spot on, and Varda Sethu is continuing week on week to knock it out of the park. I didn't enjoy Robot Revolution, I might have said. I had problems with looks, but never ever did I have a problem with Belinda. Belinda has been fantastic from the beginning, and what might have sort of like put the kibosh on enjoying Belinda as a character is that she doesn't want to be there. Belinda just wants to get home. And there is a danger when you have a character like that you won't enjoy spending time with her because she doesn't want to be there. But they're treading that line like incredibly well. And I know we're only 3 episodes in, so I'm not going to go as far to say this yet. But if this continues, if this trajectory continues, then she will be a more successful version of that kind of character than I think even Tegan was. Now, Janet Fielding as Tegan is absolutely superb. I love Tegan. I love Janet Fielding. The way they approached Tegan not wanting to be there didn't exactly work for me, because it didn't paint Tegan in a great light. It's understandable why she wouldn't want to be there, of course it is, but I do feel like it wasn't within their skill set at the time to fully do that justice. With Belinda, it looks like they might be able to. Now, again, we're only 3 episodes in, so I'm not going to say that they've done that yet. I'm not saying they've done it more successfully than they did with Tegan. I'm just saying that there is the potential here for them to surpass even that. Part of that is obviously Varda's performance. Part of it is obviously the scripting, but a large part of it is also Ncuti Gatwa himself. He's, as the Doctor, so in tune with like his emotions that he understands, I think, better than a lot of doctors when he needs to be comforting. Not necessarily like taking control of the situation and being the hero, but being comforting. He seems to grasp that quite well. That element is making the chemistry between the 15th Doctor and Belinda. It makes it work in that Belinda doesn't want to be there, but it doesn't make it feel like she's a prisoner to it. You know, enough is done to ensure that she experiences the wonder of the universe in the same way that a companion does, even when they're there voluntarily, and she experiences the darker side of it, and the Doctor is the anchor for both, and also the way she comes around to trusting the Doctor was one of the successes in looks, I think. Here it's paid off like even better. They solidify themselves even more, I think, as an excellent duo. So not only is it the best episode of season 2 so far for me, hands down and by a distance, not only is it that, it's also the best episode of Doctor Who, I think, for quite a long time. Certainly since 73 Yards. I really like 73 Yards. The more time has gone on, I think I like 73 Yards even more. Even though in episode terms that's not that long, it feels a long time because it was halfway through the last series, and this one, we're nearly halfway through the second one as well already. We get Ruby back next week. Now, for all I've said about how much I love Varda Sethu as Belinda at the moment, I thought Millie Gibson was season 1's MVP. The way Ruby's story like ended up, or at least where we left it, didn't care for. Millie Gibson as Ruby was so good that the idea of her coming back next week is exciting by itself. Even more exciting to see her back with Ncuti's Doctor, however brief that is. but also the possibility of the three of them together. I'm really excited about that. I like Ruby a lot, I like Belinda a lot, and I continue to really like the 15th Doctor. I don't think he's always been given the best material, certainly not of late. The Well, if it's the beginning of that changing, then fantastic. Colour me excited, because the 15th Doctor, I think, is a really good take on the character, but still mostly exists as potential. So what he gets given to do over the course of the coming episodes, I don't know. I know that something is building. There were seeds of it again here with the Earth's gone and the human race is gone. No one remembers them. So something's shifty there, and something is also at play, I'm convinced, with fiction and reality. If the finale is called The Reality War, if what happened in Lux is anything to go by, and the continual fourth wall breaking, then I do think that that's going to come into play. Don't have much faith in that being paid off particularly satisfyingly, not after how season 1 was wrapped up. But that's just my own negativity being coloured by not liking season 1 coming into play, and I'm fully hoping to be proved wrong. It's just, I doubt I will be. But that said, before the finale, there's still, how many episodes? Episode 4, 5, 6. There's still 3 episodes before we hit the finale. So I really hope that they are a good, strong run, and I really, really hope that the finale sticks the landing. What did you think of The Well? Did you think it was a worthy sequel to Midnight, or should it not have been a sequel at all? Was it the episode that's got you back on board completely, or is it actually, conversely, the episode that might have turned you off? Do you like this episode the least so far out of season 2? Let me know in the comments below, and I'll see you back here soon while we digest Lucky Day. Also, like I said, the marathon, the Android invasion will be coming next. So if you don't want to miss any of those, hit the subscribe button, clang the cloister bell, and I'll see you soon.